Welcome everybody, Double Tap here, and as promised today, I'm bringing you guys not only part 5, but here's part 6 to our tutorial for our Banished series. And picking up where we left off, this episode's going to be extremely important because there's going to be a lot of learning lessons. Because we built our town up in the previous episode and we purchased cattle and we have so many things on the go here, you're going to notice that my resource management starts to slack in this episode. Things start to get a little hairy. It's nothing that we can't solve. Nobody ends up dying. Everything's gonna be okay. But we're gonna learn off of what I did wrong, and I'm gonna show you guys how you can make this go even smoother, and you can remember where I went wrong when you're building your own town. So with all that being said, it doesn't take long until I make my first mistake in this video. Here you'll notice I'm looking at my market and I want it to be run, and I'm thinking as I take off that builder right there that there's nothing to be built up, forgetting that I laid down that pasture and we need it built. So here is my very first mistake. I wanted to get this market going so bad that I didn't focus on the fact that I actually needed that builder running. A lot of the times what I like to do in this game is if there's nothing to be built, I'll just take off my builders, because in the future when our population is larger, I always have more than one builder going. It's just because we're still at the beginning stages that I'm only going to have one to play with, because we are just trying to fill so many positions right now and we simply don't have enough people. So keep that in mind. This is where I went wrong immediately. The reason this pasture is not getting finished and the reason our cattle are sitting in there and just chilling in the trading post, exactly what I told you you don't want to happen in the previous episode, is because I took that builder away and they're not going to progress with that pasture until I fix that problem. But that's not the only issue we have going on right now. As the previous episode stated, we're doing great because look at our food production. That's where my mind was at. We have almost 3,000 food. We're doing fine. But I'm making a critical error, which is, if you notice our logs is at 0, our firewood is at 289. Now, the reality of it is it's early summer now, winter is coming up. They're going to need firewood, and that firewood that's there, that 300, is going to get snatched up and it's going to be taken because they're going to prep themselves for wintertime. We have no logs to replace that firewood. This is my biggest mistake, I would say, right here, because if you allow your firewood to get depleted and you don't have logs to keep your fire cutter going and getting the firewood prepared for the actual individual homes, you will freeze out during wintertime. This is just as tragic and just as quick a way to lose your civilization as allowing it to starve. So this is my biggest error right here, because if I continued on this way and I didn't notice later on in the episode that this happened, we could have lost this civilization and we would have to start all over again. That's how punishing Banished is, as I'm sure plenty of you have found out on your own. So let's all learn off of that. This was very critical errors that I made right off the beginning of this episode. But again, it's not game breaking, and I'll show you how you could continue your civilization even if you've made mistakes along the way. It's going to happen. It's a resource management game. That's part of the fun of the game. So also keep in mind that because we're out of the boarding home, as you saw earlier when I clicked it, it's completely empty. Everybody's in individual homes now, and in fact we even have some empty homes. The reality of it is because we moved them out of the boarding home, things are more difficult to maintain, and individual families, for instance, might freeze out now, where some homes grab firewood. Now, that's the benefit of the boarding home, is that because all the resources are in one place, it's much easier to maintain a civilization in there. But at the same time, as I was saying before, it's going to halt your reproduction rate at a certain point, and at that point it's basically no longer any good in the game. So there's pros and cons of the boarding house, and this is one of the major cons of moving out of it, is that resource management becomes much more difficult to maintain. But with all that being said, here I'm going to start laying out some more roads. We are beginning to have students. If you've noticed, it says down below that we have 21 adults, 2 students, and 14 children, and in fact it just switched over now. 3 of those children have become students, and now we have 5 students and only 11 children. So that's also worth noting, that the school eventually will fill up and you're going to have to produce a second school for children to go to. You don't want to have any children that can't attend school, because they're going to be uneducated citizens and they're going to work at a fraction of the rate of these educated citizens. All these students that are going to school right now are going to come out and they're going to be essentially super workers, for lack of better terms. So the school is definitely one of the most important parts of the game. And yes, if you didn't have a school laid down, those children would become laborers immediately and would skip this entire process of going to school, and you'd be able to add people into your workforce faster. And even though that's a need right now for our civilization, clearly, it's more important that they get the education. Just like in real life, it would be much more useful having educated citizens than non-educated citizens. So keep that in mind. Have the school running, and if it fills up, make sure that you lay down a second school ASAP. Now, at last, I'm finally realizing my mistake, and I start to panic here because I realize that I have no logs and no firewood. So one of the things you can do, if you have a lodger down and everything's prepared, you'll notice I have a nice lush forest to the south here, because they've been planting trees since the very beginning of the game, essentially. So this is one of the bonuses of it. If you ever have an absolute need for trees and you don't feel like sending your people long distances to travel for the wood, you could, in an emergency situation like this, just chop down all the trees right on your line of your edge of your city, and they don't have far to travel here to bring all that firewood immediately to the wood chopper and start producing wood, so that in an emergency situation like this, we have logs and the fire cutter going. And as you can see, there are all these little winter labels popping up, the little snowflakes over the homes. That's a warning sign, basically saying that that family is freezing out. And that's how close I was to losing some of my people here. If that winter just went on a little while longer, those people were going to start dying. That warning sign is you have a little while to go before they start to die. So don't let those signs pop up. Don't let the firewood get to a situation where I did right there. Learn from my mistakes, trust me. You don't want it to go down there. I got lucky. And now, one of the more unfortunate parts of this is that that forester is going to have to now go back and plant all those trees that I chopped down and revitalize that forest that I just annihilated, essentially. So that was an emergency situation. You don't want that to happen, but we are going to continue and everything's going to be okay. Now, also, our pasture is finally built here. I put some builders on it. We got 2 builders going now, and I could finally tell the cows that they're allowed to come to their new home. Essentially, we're going to put a worker on it, and you're going to see them immediately leave that little trading post, and they're going to sprint them little selves over to the pasture, and now they can start living their best life, and we don't need to worry about them disappearing or dying in our trading post. As I said, everything's going to work out. This one time I got lucky. We didn't lose our cattle. Nobody froze to death, and we're gonna be able to get on top of our wood situation this time and make sure that that does not happen again. Our food is perfectly fine, so we don't need to worry about that. That was good last episode. Now our focus is make sure that our wood is moving up, our wood production is moving, we always have that, and that our wood cutter is always good to keep the fuel going, because we don't want them to freeze next winter. And we still have the rest of spring, summer, and autumn to collect all the wood and get prepared for the winter. So it's no longer an immediate issue, and quite frankly, things are looking up again. Everything's gonna be okay. Our civilization moves on to the next stage. So I actually think that this is a perfect spot to cut episode 6. This was basically an episode of failure, but at the same time, we made it past that failure, and hopefully you guys learned something from my mistakes, and this helps you with your society moving forward. So with all that being said, I hope that you guys have enjoyed part 6. If you have, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as you guys have been doing. You've honestly been amazing helping me build this channel up from absolutely nothing to where we are today. So I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Don't forget to keep an eye out for that Prison Architect series coming up. And until next time, Double Tap out.